Hello, and welcome to the Consider This channel. This is Chapter 12 of Evidence of Soul by Sharon Patrice. Beginning of Life and Soul. Part 2. Back to the soup. In the prebiotic soup, random combinations of sugars and nucleobases are suspected to have connected spontaneously by a chemical reaction. Some broke apart, and some stayed together, continuing to grow into strands. Some strands tied themselves up in knots, and some did not, and as with all natural selection, some thrived and survived. But Earth, back then, was a hostile place, and any number of properties could have destroyed these fragile strands of RNA. It needed protection from the outside world, somewhere where it would be safe to grow without hostile interference. Welcome to the theory of Arvin Ash and his wonderful world of safety via lipids. Is it possible life arose from the primordial soup? Yes. And the soul, when did the soul enter living flesh? Could it be the soul, the very life force energy, that installed life into the first stable ribbons of RNA, encapsulated as they were, within their world of lipid cell enclosure? Fertilization is the event most used to mark the beginning point of an individual's life. Consciousness in the human embryo, for example, is provided by the thalamocortical complex. It is important to note, the thalamocortical complex is not a nerve system. It is a part of the central nervous system that plays a vital role in relaying sensory and motor signals to and from the cerebral cortex, which is the outer layer of neural tissue of the cerebrum of the brain. In the human embryo, this begins to register between the 24th and 28th week of gestation. The thalamocortical system is a biological basis of consciousness. It consists of continuously ongoing electrical neural signals between nuclei in the thalamus and neurons in all modular areas of the cortex. Without the little electronic and chemical messages, it is believed, there would be no consciousness. If consciousness in humans is brought about by electrical neural signals between nuclei, does all living matter have a consciousness? It's a yes and a no. Plants, for example, do have electrical currents. They use electrical signals to control cells and communicate between distinct parts of the plant, just as humans do. Some plants, such as the Venus flytrap, use electrical impulses to activate movement and digestion. As we are aware, or at least informed, all life on Earth came from one original life form, and as all life needs electrical stimulation, should we consider that to mean all life has a consciousness? The answer must be, let us not run before we can walk. Firstly, we should be looking at how the electrical charge got into the non-living matter in the first instance. If we go with the lipids in the soup theory, we must ask if lipids are destroyed by a sudden shock of electrical lightning, and unsurprisingly yes, they would be, if touched by lightning. However, lightning bolts have a non-visible discharge that produce extreme amounts of the hydroxyl radical and hydroperoxyl radical, which are important within the atmosphere because they initiate chemical reactions and break down molecules like the greenhouse gas, methane. The hydroperoxyl radical, also known as the hydrogen superoxide, is the protonated form of superoxide and plays a significant role in our planet's atmosphere. It also plays its part as a reactive oxygen species, also known as ROS, in cell biology. In a biological context, ROS are byproducts of the normal metabolism of oxygen. ROS have roles in cell tissues in both animals and plants but does not appear to provide an electrical signal. So, no matter how hard we try to find the connection with lightning and the production of electrical impulses in life forms arising from the primordial soup, we find no direct consequence. Electricity is made up of building blocks called atoms, which are composed of protons and neutrons in the nucleus, and electrons that revolve around the nucleus in shells. Electrons have a negative charge, while protons have a positive charge. As protons have a positive charge, and electrons have a negative charge, they attract each other. This keeps both charges equal and the atom self-balancing. In Dr. Massimo Teodorani's online presents at www.massimoteodorani.com, he informs us that David J. Bohm, an American, Brazilian, British scientist, who has been described as one of the most significant theoretical physicists of the 20th century, discovered that plasma may behave as a highly self-cooperative structure. He determines particles, ions, and electrons, which are away from each other, but within the same plasma structure, are able to feel instantaneously what happens to one of them. This gives to plasma, at least qualitatively, a structure of coherence. Therefore, the many particles composing plasma behave as though they were one entity and not separated from each other, in such a way that any action directed at one group of particles is somehow felt by another group of particles composing the same plasma. Teodorani goes on to say, what we consider as consciousness can be strictly related to the idea we have of spirit, in the ambit of a model in which consciousness, spirit and its neural correlate, the brain, are strictly linked together in a way that the one cannot exist without the other. Furthermore, in scientific studies performed on the International Space Station, and in a zero-gravity laboratory environment at a German research facility, plasma crystals sometimes developed into corkscrew shapes or even the double helix shape of DNA. These helix-shaped crystals retain an electric charge and show what the researchers called a self-organizing ability. We are informed, that is to say, it is believed the ability of living matter to generate electric signals first appeared in evolution around 700 million years ago. It is believed the predecessors of neurons were peptidergic secretory cells that appeared around 800 million years ago. Those in the know hypothesize these cells eventually gained new gene modules that enabled them to create postsynaptic arrangements and ion channels that generate accelerated electrical signals. It is a truly fascinating subject and one, I must admit, goes a little over my head, and rather than helping us to understand when consciousness first appeared in living matter, it simply throws out more questions. So, what happened to the Earth 700 million years ago to bring about this change? Well, around 700 million years ago, it is believed the Earth experienced a global ice age event, known as the Sturtian glaciation. The event was so extreme that it caused the Earth to become a gargantuan snowball for at least 5 million years, although it is believed the event lasted from top to tail for some 57 million years. The exact cause of this event is still being studied, but one possibility is that volcanic eruptions caused the Earth's temperatures to plummet, owing to the particles of sulfur-rich sediments blasted into the atmosphere as sulfur dioxide, absorbing solar radiation emitted from the volcanoes which may well have brought about the rapid cooling of the Earth. At this time in our Earth's history there may have been more lightning strikes than previously, as lightning often follows volcanic eruptions, owing to the friction caused between particles from the thick plumes of ash clouds thrown up into the air as a result of the eruption. As these particles rub together, the charges inside the ash clouds begin to separate. The resulting charge builds up to generate lightning strikes. It is also known that extreme freezing temperatures contribute further to volcanic lightning. Furthermore, as we understand, lightning can create plasma by heating the air around it to extremely hot temperatures, causing the air to ionize and form a plasma passage. Could some of that plasma produced become living sentient plasma? When Tonga's underwater Hunga Tonga volcano erupted on the 15th of January, 2022, it shot out magma and created columns of ash with ocean water vapor. As described by, and all credits for bringing this to our attention, an editorial on www.arstekika.com. Hunga is infamous for its tantrums, but it has outdone itself. That storm now boasts the most lightning ever recorded on Earth. Hanging ominously above the Pacific Ocean was a volcanic cloud, lit by concentric rings of lightning that flashed about 192,000 times over the 11 hours that the volcano was active. That's some 2,615 flashes a minute. Lightning shot up to 19 miles, that's 30 kilometers high. They go on to inform us, a U.S. Geological Survey team of researchers, led by volcanologist Alexa Van Eaton, states our findings show that a sufficiently powerful volcanic plume can create its own weather system, sustaining the conditions for electrical activity at heights and rates not previously observed. Now, if that was just one underwater volcanic eruption, imagine so many simultaneous eruptions that no heat could penetrate our atmosphere, plunging our planet into geological process of glaciation. The first multicellular organisms were the ediacarans, ocean-dwelling life forms which appeared about 700 million years ago and disappeared around the time of the so-called Cambrian explosion 540 million years ago. The Cambrian explosion, also known as the biological Big Bang, refers to a measure of time, approximately 538.8 million years ago, when a sudden appearance of complex life formed on Earth. Before early Cambrian diversification, most organisms were of a simple nature, composed of individual cells, or small multicellular organisms, occasionally organized into colonies. As the rate of diversification subsequently accelerated, the variety of life became more convoluted, and began to resemble that of today. It was the ever-inquisitive Charles Darwin who talked of the inexplicable lack of earlier fossils as one of the main difficulties for his theory of descent through natural selection. However, as time and science have moved on, we now understand the Cambrian explosion was a period in our Earth's history that promoted new and more complex life forms, yet we still have no idea why or how. Some possible factors put forward are rising levels of atmospheric oxygen. This may have allowed for a more complex body plan. Increase in oceanic calcium concentrations that enabled the formation of shells and skeletons. Rising sea levels may have created more habitats and niches for different living matter to evolve. Lastly, evolution in general. You may, at this point, be wondering what this has to do with proof of soul. Well, as I have already said, I am a great believer in the saying, an organism does what makes an organism successful, and there, within that saying, lies the rub. If single-celled living organisms, with no electrical impulse or known consciousness, were apparent on Earth as far back as 3.7 billion years ago, and continued happily and relatively uninterrupted until 700 million years ago, what made that organism change? For example, why did an ancient single-cell organism, who continued its line by dividing into two, thereby producing another single-cell organism of same, suddenly or over time, decide it needed two of the same organisms to evolve into two distinct types of same, as in male and female, in order to reproduce? Surely that would cut its chances of reproduction in half. It appears to be, and is widely acknowledged by people that tell us about such things, that the first complex form of multicellular life first formed around 600 to 700 million years ago. Generally, it is believed that unicellular life reigned supreme for well over 2 billion years before the evolution and spread of multicellularity. So, what happened? Of course, evolution took its part, as is still obviously happening in front of our eyes to this day, with the same species of life force, changing from an original ancestor with a new line cousin, but still compatible in reproduction. As a simple example, if a male Asian Afghan dog, with its magnificent long coat, tall stance, and long slim facial structure, decided to reproduce its line, in order to carry on its existence, and DNA, mated with a rather squat, short-haired Welsh Corgi, of the female type, their coupling would have every reason to produce living offspring. It is because they are related to a close common ancestor, and although they may have changed in physical appearance, from the original line, they are still close enough in DNA terms to reproduce successfully. A little like Homo sapiens mating with Homo neanderthal women, or Homo neanderthal mating with Homo denisovan, and their offspring mating with Homo sapiens. We had all changed in appearance, but still had the same robust DNA to produce the ultimate function of reproduction. Facts. 1. The transition from RNA to DNA is still a hot topic of research among scientists, but we do know DNA was around at least 2 million years ago. 2. Life begins at fertilization. 3. All life contains electrical impulse. 4. Living sentient plasma is able to show consciousness. 5. Plasma is able to produce a double helix shape of DNA. 6. It is believed the spirit soul or consciousness is an intricate yet separate part of life. Theories. 1. Life formed from the primordial soup with perhaps an interaction of an electrical current. 2. Life formed from smokers, deep within the oceans of the primordial soup. 3. The chemical and matter ingredients first needed from the primordial soup as building blocks of life were encapsulated within lipid cells. The next 2 chapters will seem out of step with living sentient plasma, deep smokers, and primordial soup. I ask you, dear reader, to bear with me on this as the following chapters will help with our conclusion. This is the end of chapter 12. If you have any comments or questions, I'd love to hear them, so please leave them in the comments section below. Hey, before you go, may I ask you to please hit that subscribe button, like and share. Now, let's head over to chapter 13.